Hello.
We're live.
Yeah, exciting. So this time we didn't, at least I didn't really announce it anywhere because I thought that we kind of said last week that it would be on Thursdays, right? So thank you for joining if you joined. Yeah, how are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good.
It's good.
And how are you guys? I know that sometimes people listen to the audio only, so that's great. And hello to you as well.
Yeah.
And
Hi.
hi, Lisa, in the chat. I'm so sorry. I know you had sent me a message, and I will get back to you. I had a super busy day all day today at work. I just got home not too long ago, and I still had a little bit of work to do. So I have not really been anywhere. That was the other reason I didn't really post anything, because I just was busy.
That's funny because I was looking for the post so I can screenshot it and put it on my Instagram, in my stories, and it wasn't anywhere to be found. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know you had already said you didn't really want to be posting it, so
Yeah.
I figured it was on purpose more than anything.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll kind of get started.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you if you wanted to share, because I know you have some people that also follow you on Instagram, and you were actually in the hospital earlier this week.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling, and do you want to talk about any of that experience that you went through?
Yeah, thank you for asking so kindly. Yes, so I had like a mental breakdown, I guess, is what I would call it. I fainted. It was a very scary thing that happened. It was a very scary event. So I guess I'll just start with what happened, and then I'll say why I think it happened. I woke up at 3:30 in the morning, and my stomach was hurting. We haven't really gone into this, but I get chronic stomach pains because I developed this illness by stressing so much and working so much as a missionary, making tamales. I had huge orders to fill all by myself, basically, and then a 2-year-old to take care of. So that consistent stress led to my chronic stomach pains, and now I only get them when I'm super, super stressed. So on this day that we're talking, I don't even know what day I'm living in, so I don't know when it happened, but a few days ago.
Yeah, I think it was Monday, right? Monday morning or Tuesday morning.
Oh, yeah, I think you're
early
right.
in the week.
Yeah. So earlier this week, I had that pain. I woke up. I came to the kitchen to get a little bit of the pain pills, prescription pain pills that I have. And I don't know how I didn't notice, but before I knew it, I guess I realized too late that I was starting to lose consciousness. So my stomach was hurting really badly, and I couldn't find the pills, and I kind of kept looking down because every time I looked up, my vision would just disappear. I couldn't see anymore. So I repeated that a few times until my mind kind of caught up with what was happening, and then I started thinking, oh my goodness, I'm about to pass out. I'm not going to make it. So I made my way to my room, and as I was walking, I don't know what happened. I
blacked out.
Yeah, I blacked out. Basically, it's funny because I was telling Misael that to me, it was like I was dreaming. Like I could see vivid dreams, but nothing to do with what was happening to me. And then I started hearing, like, I guess my own mind was trying to tell me that something was up, because I just had this like reoccurring thought: you're on the floor, you're on the floor, you're on the floor. When I finally came to, I couldn't move. So I just had to lay there. I couldn't move my jaw. I just couldn't feel my body. I felt like my mind and my body weren't connecting. So I just had to kind of like stay there until I could finally move my jaw and yell for help. And then my husband came and he helped me. And then I started getting chills, and it started feeling like if somebody put vapor rub all over my back. or been gay. Like I started feeling that like icy hot feeling, and I started sweating. So I think that's it. Oh, and I couldn't move my arms. I couldn't really feel my arms. So then the next morning I called my doctor, and she told me to head on over to the emergency room, and that's what I did. And they did all sorts of tests, all the stuff. They drew blood and scans and stuff, and I was okay on all tests, thank God. But there's got to be a reason for this. So I realized I've been very stress is stress is kind of undermining it, but so what I realized is happening is when I got out of church, out of respect for my mom, I kind of kept it quiet. So I never got to actually vocalize what had happened, and I'm a very verbal processor. So even though I spoke to my husband, it felt like I was never really out. I don't know. I don't know if that'll make sense to anybody, but it didn't feel right with me. Now that I am not only vocalizing it and I'm so open about it, I feel like I'm reliving a lot of those things. And then when people tell me about their stories, I feel like I kind of relive. It's like I have PTSD, and I kind of relive some of the things that I also went through. So I think that in and of itself has been hard to deal with. But then also, I started to kind of feel ashamed that I feel so bad, because I just kind of want to, I just wish I was healed already. And I realized that I started feeling very ashamed and frustrated with myself for still feeling bad, or like still not being completely healed. So that added to my stress, and then being a mom and all the other stuff that we had just taken a trip and we had just gotten back. I feel like it was just a culmination of everything that led to that kind of breakdown. So that happened. I've just been taking it really easy. I think that a big mistake that I was making was I was just trying to respond to all the messages as soon as I got them, instead of like designating a time to do that, because we really want to help and we're happy to. And I feel like as long as we can, we will. But it's just so important to like give myself space and give myself like a designated time so I can be healthy and I can pour from my cup.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, in adding to that, we also spoke to a close friend earlier in the week, and they were also bringing up how important it is to, like acknowledge the process of healing that you yourself have to go through. And I mean, I remember when we had very recently decided to leave the church. Like there was just days where that's kind of all you can think about, right? Mm-hmm. Like it just kind of like new things keep coming up in your mind, and you're like, oh man, what am I going to do about that, or how am I going to deal with this? And especially when you're going through a big shift like that, like it's very overwhelming because everything revolves around feeling either guilt or some sort of fear or questioning things. And so, like you said, like sometimes those feelings or thoughts kind of come back, and it's very important to give yourself the space and the time to, get over or overcome those things. And, that kind of also brings us to everybody's process is going to look different, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody is going to have to figure out a way of overcoming that anxiety that they might feel or the stress that they might feel differently. And it's very important for us and for everybody to identify like what is actually helping me feel better. And that's why, like in one of our videos, we said, if you need to take a break from this whole situation, like feel free to step away from social media, feel free to step away from
taking a stance, all of that.
Yeah, to just like take it easy on yourself, because even if we might look like we're feeling okay, like we don't we don't always understand exactly how our body is coping
Right.
with
100%.
the anxiety or the stress that our body is under, right? Our mental, our mind is under anxiety or stress, and sometimes we get distracted and we seem like we're fine, and then when we least expect it, it kind of creeps back.
Yeah. Kind of comes to scare us. Yes, definitely. I think it's really important to do things like journaling. That might be good for you. Getting out in nature might also help.
I think journaling is a really good one to get thoughts. Somebody actually suggested that in a message that they sent me, and I'm sure I shared with you, that like getting back into journaling, or beginning a journal to just kind of get those things out of your head. It can be very like relaxing, or I don't think relaxing.
I think it puts thoughts into perspective, and it doesn't have to look like a certain way. My journal, I do it on my computer, and it's like I just kind of like on the same page, I will write the date, and then I'll just kind of like dump everything that I'm feeling. And then also, sometimes I feel like I don't have time to write, and I will just record myself and then delete it later. But at least I got it out, and at least I processed it out loud. So that does help in my experience, and obviously in many others' experience. But I do definitely think that it's really important to remember that the body remembers what the mind forgets. So sometimes you're not paying attention to your feelings, but your body is processing those, and it is affecting you. Your subconscious can hold. I don't want to go on, but but I do think that please learn from my mistake, because I didn't notice that I was not doing well until my body gave out. So yeah. So what do you do for yourself? It's so weird, because in my opinion, when I see you, I just feel like you're just so good. And I think that adds to me too. I think that like it's so easy to say like, oh yeah, everybody has their own process, but I feel like sometimes it's easy to fall into like feeling jealous of somebody else's process, or just wanting to speed yours up. So I would like to ask you, like, what do you do, and how are you feeling?
Well, I know that we've talked about this a few times, and I think that I'm a very practical person. To me, like, there is a side of me that is very quick to say something like, well, there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm just going to move on. And in a way, I do move on, because I'm a very analytical person, and I think that when those two things kind of combine, I go like, well, is there anything I can do about this? And then I answer my own question, well, not at this time. I can't do anything about that, so I might as well move on. And I think that another thing that helps me is that I tend to be forgetful. So when it comes to something that is stressing me out, after that initial question, can I do anything about it? If the answer is no, I'll move on, and then I forget the details. So like when it comes to us, I know that kind of sometimes like, it could get on your nerves, because you're like, well, I don't know if this is like a good enough example, but I'll sometimes have conversations with my mom, and then you'll be like, hey, so what did you guys talk about? And I can't remember. Like, I can't remember detailed conversations. I just remember like summaries of things. So I'll be like, oh, well, we kind of talked about this, and we came to the conclusion that like this is what we're going to do. I know it's very vague, but this is my point. I don't remember the details, but I remember like, oh, and then we both felt fine about it, and then we moved on. And it was like an hour-long conversation. But I'm not good at recalling like the very specific details. And so when something like this happened, or when we went through this, I was more my approach and the way I coped with it, I guess, was kind of just like, well, there's nothing I can do about it now, and I'm just going to focus on doing what I can, or focusing on on my work or focusing on, like I said last week, like, well, there's a movie that I want to watch. I'm gonna look forward to that, and everything else I'm gonna kind of take a step back from. And so that's kind of how I've dealt with most difficult things in my life. I kind of just focus on the things that I can either affect in a good way, or focus on the things that I want to look forward to, that I think are the positives. And so I don't know if that answers the
Yeah, that
question.
does.
I did want to read a couple of the comments real
Sure.
quick. A lot of people said hi, so hey everyone. Mara said, take care of yourself, take it easy. Thank you. And then Elisa wrote, spiritual trauma syndrome, divine timing. Have y'all seen a therapist? Do you want to speak a little bit to that?
I'll speak for myself, and then you'll speak for yourself. I have, but in all honesty, I didn't like it. So I did see a therapist, but she, I guess I'll just talk about my experience a little bit. I went to 2 sessions, and I am like, so I'm the kind of, my personality is very like, yes, we can do it, let's get started, and I just jump into things, right? So I went to see this therapist, and I was just kind of like, okay, I'm here, and I believe I can be healed, and what do I do? She was like, well, you talk. So I did, and she just listened, and I thought, okay, well, first session, maybe next session she'll have some insight, or she'll ask me some questions. And the second session, I realized that she was just going to sit there. And I did ask her, I was like, is this how it works? Do you just sit here and I just talk? And she was like, I was like, do you ask questions or something? Because I thought that she was supposed to do something. I don't know. Give me some insight, ask some questions, help me process, And she just said nope. So it didn't work out. My doctor, though, it took a doctor to tell me after I fainted that what I am going through is a huge deal, and that I should see it as a huge deal, and that I should look for a therapist. I told him about my experience, and he was like, I'm sorry to tell you, that's just going to happen sometimes, but then you're going to move on to the next and next and next. And actually, I will show you guys. He gave me this long list of therapists. So thank you for asking. Soon.
Yeah, find another therapist. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And the doctor also thought it was a good idea to just keep looking.
What about you? Do you think you would ever consider going to therapy?
Sure. Like, I'm definitely open to it, because I know that many people say that it's helped them a lot, and so I think that there is a lot to gain. But I wouldn't have done well in that situation. I wouldn't have just wanted to talk.
Yeah.
I like to talk about things, but I don't like to just talk about myself, especially. So, but I love talking about ideas and different concepts, and just like, well, what do you think of this? And I like, I guess, dialogue, conversation, but I don't like to just, if I had to talk about myself for long, I would probably run out of things to say fairly quickly.
Fair.
Yeah. But I'm definitely open to it. I think that, the thing that I did get into a lot was like TED Talks, because, and some of my favorite talks are the ones from therapists, psychologists, like psychiatrists, because the way that they explain your behaviors to you, human behaviors, or why we process things the way we do, or the way that our minds and brains cope with situations. I think that's fascinating. and like, we got into personality tests for a while, because we were like, oh, these are very good insights about the way that I deal with situations, or the way that I think about things. So I think that even if you don't find a therapist right away, you
can start with that.
Yeah, there are so many resources out there where people will help you better understand yourself. And I think that that's a fascinating thing, because then other things start to make a little bit more sense. Just like, oh, why do I why do I always respond or react this way to certain things? Like, I think that is incredible insights to have about yourself.
And understanding yourself is so important, because then you can regulate yourself and you can have better relationships. So yes, definitely there are a lot of resources out there, and I will keep looking for a therapist. Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, I think we were going to talk a little bit about getting back to the church subject topic.
Yes. Enough about us. Let's get into this.
We got a few questions and people bringing up like the case itself.
Yes.
The trial, the hearing.
So we've received several questions about what really happened in the hearing. I think that a lot of us are, there's not a whole lot of information, especially when you are from LLDM. There can be some things that even if you look up, because we're not lawyers. By the way, disclaimer, we are not lawyers.
At all.
But because you're not lawyers, it could be hard to understand due process and what really did happen, and why LDM people keep saying things like, oh, his rights were violated.
Yeah. So that was huge for me, because when I looked at it, and there were certain resources that I looked at to like understand what had happened, right? Because if you're in the church, all you kept hearing was his rights were violated. Mm-hmm. The justice system is so unfair to him.
They're against him.
Yeah. And then if you were on the outside, all you heard was, or like most of the things that I heard were, there's so much evidence out there against him. He has not denied anything. His lawyers are not denying anything. Like, this is surely going to end up with him in prison for longer than the sentencing he did receive.
Right.
And so that was a little confusing to me, and I'm sure it's confusing to a lot of people, and why and how the church continued to tell the membership that his rights were violated.
Right.
So we spoke to somebody who has much more knowledge about this than we do. And they also recommended, I know there's a channel out there who, I always find it funny when I like reference things, but like Virginia Beckett's channel.
Yeah.
She is an amazing resource.
Yes, she's a really good resource.
Going through and using actual court documents and going through, a lot of the legal process and procedures that actually took place. And so we recommend, if you want to, and some of the videos I saw were in Spanish. So I don't know if all her content is in Spanish, and sometimes I don't notice it because I also speak Spanish.
Uh-huh.
But that channel is an amazing resource.
That's right, and she does have screenshots of
transcripts.
The court transcripts. So you can always pause it and read the transcripts on her YouTube page.
So I wanted to go into the kind of like the summary that we got about what happened, and why the church keeps saying that his rights were violated. Yes.
So just before we go into this, I would like to kind of tell you guys what we're going into. So we did speak to somebody with legal knowledge, and this person was able to provide a summary. And from our understanding, we want to share with you guys what we understood that happened in the case. Later on, the same person told us that we might be able to get a person with legal knowledge to come on to a live that we can ask questions to, and
you can ask questions.
Yes, we, the general, all of us, can ask questions that we might have about what happened in the court.
Yeah. So my question was, why does the church keep saying that his rights were violated, right? And so this is like the summary of what I understood. So when Nason was arrested, there was some evidence already out there against him, which is how they were able to get the warrant to arrest him, right? So there was the testimony from the Jane Does, and then on top of that, there was like the cell phones with text messages and whatever the Jane Does had with them as evidence against Nason. And so with that, they were able to get an arrest warrant. They went and arrested him. But then when they arrested him, he had a cell phone, an iPad, and other devices on him. And so then they were able to get access. And when I say they, I mean the prosecution, right? Like the people who were prosecuting him. And so they got access to a bunch more evidence and devices that they were then able to they were then going to analyze, look for evidence, and then use as evidence in the trial against him. And so, because this was not like the Jane Does did not go and hire a law firm to take this case on and prosecute Nason. They went to the attorney general for California, and so this kind of became the state against Nason. And if you know anything about like law, and from my understanding, like this was essentially like a public service, that was being done, and so I understood that there was not enough resources allocated to this court case and to this trial. So all of those devices and all of the media on those devices that belong to Nason, somebody had to go through them and then see what was relevant, and then take whatever was relevant and present it in court, and then also hand it over to the defense law group, to the defense attorneys, and then so that they could also be aware of what the evidence against him was.
Right. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
There? So basically, they were supposed to gather that evidence. The attorney general, so the people on the Jane Doe side, they were supposed to gather that evidence. They were supposed to look through it, find anything that might, it's called exculpatory evidence, which means that like might dismiss what the Jane Does were saying, or kind of discredit the Jane Does, right? They were supposed to find that evidence and then turn it all over to the
defense
team, to Nason's team.
Right. So there was so many things to go through, so many devices to go through, that there wasn't enough dedicated resources to comb through all of that information and find what was relevant, and then categorize it and distribute it appropriately, right? So what happened was that instead of giving those devices and all of that media to a lawyer who is familiar with like how the system works and what evidence is, what would be considered relevant evidence and what could be considered exculpatory evidence, there wasn't enough resources. They gave it to agents instead, like agents.
I think it was an officer.
Point is, it wasn't a lawyer, right? And so it was agents who started going through all of this information, and so they just weren't as familiar with it. And then instead of turning in everything to the defense team on a timely manner, they trickled the information over. And so the Attorney General's office, the prosecution going against Nason, because they didn't turn everything over on time, because they didn't have the resources to dedicate to it, then that's where the violation of the rights comes in, because the defense team should have had all of the evidence in a timely manner. And then, the case was dismissed at one point and then brought back up. And that was like back in 2020. And then this last time, fast forward to right before the sentencing hearing, this happened again, where the agents who were looking through the evidence and were supposed to categorize and hand over the evidence to the defense team, because they weren't sure of what was exculpatory or if anything was exculpatory, they brought up something as if it were exculpatory and gave it to the defense team. And then the defense team had grounds to say, well, why didn't you give this over sooner? Actually, you were hiding this evidence and it was exculpatory. And so that gave them like a
grounds.
That gave them grounds to say, well, if you continue to prosecute and take us to trial, we're just going to keep appealing, and eventually we might get a mistrial, and this whole thing will be over. So because the Attorney General's office did not allocate the adequate amount of resources to this, they were at risk of
missing.
Yeah, of a judge during the appeals process saying that this was like not a legitimate or technically correct trial, and dismissing the entire thing. And so because they didn't want to run that risk, the Attorney General's office did as the Jane Does said, right? They didn't consult with the Jane Does. They just went ahead and said, well, let's do the plea deal, the 16 years and 8 months, and we'll just keep it at that and get a conviction, right? And so that whole thing that the church is being told about the violation to Nason's rights and the justice system, there's
a truth to that.
A tiny amount of truth to it, but not in the way that they're saying. So
there's a technical truth to it.
Yeah. Right? So there was some mistakes that were made that could have resulted in Nason walking free, right, for a period of time, because I noticed that Elisa wrote in there that this is the beginning, and there is more things that are going on that are against Nason, but those are still in the works, from what we know, when we know very little. Yeah. And so there is more things coming, but when it came to this particular trial, because the Attorney General's office did make a few pretty big mistakes, then they wanted to make sure that they at least Nason didn't walk free. And then if you take that, if you hear that and you're like, oh well, then maybe Nason is innocent. No, that was never in question, whether he was innocent or not. So the judge, right, he knew that there was this evidence out there, but the justice system is like a system that can fail. And so you have to consider that even though there were some things that were not done according to the process 100% of the way correctly, the judge did not say that the exculpatory evidence was actually exculpatory, that it was actually just a technicality miscategorized, but that evidence did not prove that Nason was innocent. It was actually just miscategorized, mislabeled as exculpatory evidence. And so despite the fail in the technicalities, the judge still did not say that the court would be dismissed, because at that point the defense team motioned to dismiss the entire case, but there was too much evidence to dismiss it. There was still so much there that proved that Nason had, done things with minors, that there was no way that because of the technicality, the judge was just suddenly going to turn a blind eye to everything that was there.
So I think So I think that basically the judge sees the evidence or knows about the evidence, and the evidence is damning enough to where he's like, okay, even though you are right, even though his rights were violated on a technicality, I'm still not going to let him go. We're still not going to let him go because the evidence is so damning. So there definitely was evidence, and as much as people want to say that his rights were violated because this is all like some big plot, well, actually, no. Mistakes were made, for sure, and his rights were violated under the law. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there were videos, that there were pictures, that there was so much evidence that was damning enough for him to get at least for him to get those 16 years.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, you even hear it in the judge's,
remark.
in his remarks when he said that his hands were tied because, and I thought it was so
Powerful.
Yeah, powerful and sad the way he said, lawyers do what lawyers do.
Yes.
And so this is what we have to
I think we all felt that.
But he did not for a second believe that Nason was innocent of anything.
No.
And that just goes to show you, because I know that there are some people who are here, who do watch these videos that we're making, and they feel doubt. They feel kind of like it's hard to feel confident about saying this man, who I believe was a man of God, did these terrible things. There's always going to be, if you're surrounded by people who say this man is perfect and everything he does is perfect, there's going to be a part of you that says, are they right? Is God going to be angry if I think badly of him? And so to those people we say, there was so many people who are outside of the church, who are not against the church, who have no problem with the church itself, but who saw everything that was happening and made, a very unbiased observation to say, this man is doing very bad things, right?
One of those people being the judge.
Right, the judge.
Right? So there are people like the judge who don't have a reason to be biased because they're not part of the Light of the World Church, and they're not part of a plot to bring down the Light of the World Church. They're just doing their job. They were able to see that there was enough evidence that was damning, and never did they say that Nason might be innocent, and his own lawyers never did they say that he might be innocent. They said that it was consensual.
That everything he did was consensual.
I think that's a big point to make. I know we've kind of already talked about that before, but I think that's a really big point to make, that not even his own lawyers advocated for his innocence. What their defense was, that the girls who very evidently were with Nason were not victims, but were willing. So they were saying that that Nason wasn't innocent from the acts, but that the way that the acts were committed was not illegal.
Right, not illegal was their point. That the things he was doing, everybody was okay with them, and so they were okay. And I know that some people had mentioned the Netflix documentary, Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey. And I think it's so mind-boggling, like the amount of similarities there are between, how Warren Jeffs, who was the leader, the prophet of the FLDS, which is a fundamentalist group from a branch of Mormons.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he was sent to prison, there was still people like taking notes of everything he said, and he kept giving his revelations to the church and kept being like the church leader from prison, even though like there was so much evidence of the terrible things he had done as well. Abused minors, which is what Nason also has been convicted of.
Right.
But there's some people who are still so
loyal.
So just, I know brainwashed is such a harsh word, but but they are so.
Well, what would you say of the Mormons? Would you call them
the FLDS?
Yes. Would you call them brainwashed? All of this was, all of this was aired.
I would say conditioned. I think that's it.
Okay.
Because brainwashed, in my opinion, brainwashed like assumes that you were one way at one point, that you believed one thing at one point,
sure.
and then were
converted.
But
right.
the thing with LODM and a lot of these other groups that are similar is that you were born into it. Yes. Right? You were born there.
You were raised that way.
And so you were raised and conditioned, not brainwashed, because you never had the chance to believe anything else. You know, I get so sad when I see like little kids on YouTube videos and Facebook posts from the church, and they're saying like, Papi Nason, I love you with all my heart, and you're the reason for my everything, for everything I have, you know, like, and they're like 4, 5, 6-year-olds. That's conditioning.
I wish we could say to those people who those children belong to, I wish we could say to those parents, how many videos have your kids appeared in where they're singing the same way to God? You know, because they will appear on the videos and they'll sing to Nason, and I think that they have such a pureness of heart, and the way that they sing, they actually, of course, they believe what they're saying, and they're giving honor to Nason. How many videos have they appeared in where they're giving honor to God, who is truly the reason that we have everything, that we have food, that we have water, and that all of our love and devotion should belong to.
Right. Yeah, you don't see that very often.
No, and I think that would be a good question to ask them, you know, with respect and with love, because we should be able to think critically again and make that contrast. I did want to say about, you had mentioned how scary it is to say, you know, Nason might be guilty. Yeah. You know, like even the thought, you know, we were, like you said, conditioned to believe that even thinking that was sinful. Using our critical judgment was sinful when it came to the elected or his decisions. Yeah. But guys, when we look back at the hymns that we used to sing, right? Es posible que solo te cortes y no derrames la amargura de tu hiel. That is like awful, you know, to say to one. That is an awful warning.
So I guess, what would it be in English?
I don't know.
It's
Es apóstol el que Dios ha enviado.
Yeah. Well, that line that you said is would roughly translate to like, it's possible that instead of damaging others, that you cut yourself off from the church and that you don't pour out the bitterness within you.
Yeah, within your skin. It's awful. It's awful to say. But also, can you translate what I'm going to say? Es apóstol el que Dios ha enviado.
The one God has sent is an apostle.
Yes. Nunca. How does it say again, guys? Nunca. Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna do this. But I had it and I lost it. Nunca derrames something contra de él murmuración. But basically saying like, don't ever dare speak about him. And
sorry, just real quick. There's a verse in the Bible, right, that says, don't say anything of the king in secret because little birds will carry off what you say and whisper it in like the ear. I don't know. I might be adding that part, but there is a verse in the Bible that says like, if you dared to whisper against the king, because it's in the Old Testament, if you dare to whisper against the king, like the birds will hear what you said and carry it off, and like what you thought you said in secret will actually come back to haunt you because it will get to the ears of the king. You know, so that verse was actually used in the Bible to tell the church membership, don't you dare speak against the man of God because we'll know, like somebody will know, and then you'll face the consequences.
Right. And when you're a kid, you believe your parents, right? And then you grow up and then you believe what you're taught consistently. And when you sing hymnals like that, when that's what you learn, not even in thought, don't offend him even in thought. You guys, I remember being in the labor, and I have like, I have several actual different memories of people saying things like, and brothers ministers saying stuff like, I feel so bad for XYZ because they spoke against the apostle of God, and that is the sin that God will not forgive.
Oh yeah.
But then again, there were people who we would preach to who would speak ill of God, and we would never think that they were damned. We would never think that God would damn them or that God would be so mad that he would strike them down. On the contrary, we felt bad for them, and we wanted to nourish them with the word of God and the love of God, and show them that God wasn't this whatever they thought that God was. But speaking ill of God was not seen as big of a sin or as big of a deal as speaking ill of the apostle.
That's a very interesting thought, right? And Mary Lou wrote, "Don't spew." That would have been a good translation, but I always thought that the way that the hymns were translated were not always very good. Like the vocabulary was kind of limited on those, but yeah, the tone of that hymn gave hella chills.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Na, 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 na.
Yeah. It was like
yes.
Phantom of the Opera style.
Definitely, and so many others. And then it's not just the hymns, it's the preaching obviously as well. Yeah. And not just that, but the rhetoric that we hear while we're growing up amongst all the brothers, amongst everybody. But then I wanted to bring up the hymns because those were sung every day, and that's what you go home singing to yourself. That is like such a good way to condition you. You
condition yourself after a while. Red 7 wrote, "Conditioned like a habit, like how you turn your blinkers to make a turn without even thinking about it." Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very true. It's just
absolutely
as you're turning the wheel a little bit.
So imagine somebody telling you, well, actually, no, you're not going to turn your blinkers on when you're going to turn anymore. You're just going to turn because that's a safe thing to do. You're going to doubt yourself over and over and over again. So I really feel for anybody who is doubting themselves. I really feel for anybody who is afraid of saying that Nason is guilty. But you don't have to say it because he said it. He said he's guilty. And as much as people want to say, no, actually, he just took a plea bargain. The lawyer we were speaking to also said that there is such a thing called no contest. No contest that he could have said, and that no contest would have meant, well, I'm not saying yes and I'm not saying no, but pleading guilty means you're accepting what you're being accused of. So
you're admitting, right?
Yes, you're
because
admitting.
Accepting is like, well, they said it, and I guess I accept what they
it could be a cop out.
So it's like, if you plead guilty, you admit to the things you're being accused of.
Right.
That's what it is.
And someone did tell me, as a defense, they said, well, how many, out of all of the charges that he was being charged with, how many did he plead guilty to? Well, three out of all of them. But I want to invite you to look at Virginia Beckett's videos. Look at the court transcripts. Don't be afraid to find information, because Jesus said that the truth shall set you free. How are you supposed to know what the truth is if you are getting all of your information from one source and from a biased source? Mm-hmm. You know that the church is biased, not because they are the church, but because everything that they've told their members up until now has not been transparent. It hasn't been transparent. They've that the church is biased because they have told their own members not to inform themselves.
Right.
Who has the authority to take your agency to be an informed citizen, to be an informed person? God says over and over again how important it is to
seek, right?
To knock, to search.
So, I wanted to go back for just a second to something you had said in a couple of comments. The apostle received more recognition than God and Jesus. And then somebody else wrote, when I told my mom I didn't believe in God, the first thing she asked was, does that mean you no longer believe in the apostle? That's how much more important the apostle is than believing in God. And that's so true and so sad. But it, like you were saying earlier, if somebody declared themselves an atheist as Christians, who believe in Jesus, you are taught to still try and save their soul, right? Like still preach to them. And Paul, in one of his letters, writes, like, as if I were a Jew to win over the Jews, as if I didn't believe, although I do, to win over those who don't believe. Like, if you truly believe in Jesus, then part of your responsibility as a believer is to make disciples, right? To go and let other nations know that Jesus died for them. At least that is your that is one of your responsibilities. So if somebody calls themselves an atheist, your duty is still to, talk to them about Jesus.
Right.
But the irony of this whole situation is that if somebody says they don't believe in God, that's fine. Like, they can still be a church member. But if they say they don't believe in the election, then
they become an apostate.
They become enemies of the church, know, and so
they become an enemy, which is they label them apostates, and they become an enemy of the church.
Right. And so, like us, for example, who had been, in the church for most of our lives, it's so not Christian of the church to not talk to us instead of trying to still save our souls.
Yes.
Like I always say, at least get out of the church, at least for the safety of your children who don't have the ability to choose and look after themselves. But the church, like when it comes to my children, right, who the church presented, like do you remember like the survey the questionnaire they make you answer, where they're like, if your child ever like becomes rebellious, are you okay with the church coming to intervene and like help you raise your child?
Right, that happens when a child is presented to
a
church.
When a child is presented to a church, like that, the parents are asked that question: are you willing to let the church also help you raise your child? And like we all say amen. And then like, well, where's the church now, right? I, as a irresponsible, non-believing father, have stopped taking my kids to church. Like, where's the church trying to save them? Because that's the Christian thing to do.
Right.
To look after those who have lost their way.
And it doesn't even have to be like, I'm not even going to go as far to come to preach, like to saying like, why aren't they preaching to us? Or why aren't they like coming to our door, and knocking on it and seeing how we're doing? Not even a message.
Yeah.
Years of, we're not better, I promise you. I just think that it's so important to think about this,
Right.
To compare the love that they preach to the love that they show.
Yeah.
So, not even a message. In fact, we got blocked and deleted. So yes, definitely. Where are they? Where is that love?
And like that's one of the signs. Like, if you're still in the church, you should know that your God-given duty as the Church of Christ, if that's what you believe you are, your God-given responsibility is to save souls, right?
Yes.
You could disagree with my view all you want, but if you're the Church of Christ, your responsibility from God is to try and still save my soul.
Right.
And so, like the stance that the church is taking of not speaking to people who leave the church, that is not godly at all. That's not Christian in any way, because you would think that people leaving means we have to work harder to save their souls.
Right.
And so it's like I said earlier, it's a very ironic situation, but it goes to show that if you're not acting like the Church of Christ, you might not be the Church of Christ.
Right.
Right. And I mean that with all due respect.
Yeah, of course.
Like I said, to anybody who's out there. So if the church won't do the right thing, you have to try and be good with God, and you do the right thing.
Yes.
And so that will look differently in different people's lives.
Right.
But like, just as a fellow as a fellow person trying to do the right thing, I think you also have a responsibility to do right.
Yes, absolutely. And right is not a feeling. I want to say that. I think that I don't think, there is a big difference between being able to have opinions and state your opinions. But you should not have an opinion about a fact. If I'll clarify. So there's a difference, obviously, between facts and opinions. You can't call a fact an opinion. You can't say, well, he did admit to being guilty, but I just feel like he didn't mean it. I just feel like he's not guilty.
Right.
At that point, you're not really seeking truth. I want to go back just a tiny bit to what we were saying about the moral.
Yeah, sorry, super quick. Somebody wrote to me saying heretic is the trending word right now.
That's awful.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
It's really harsh. Why don't we talk
Go
about
ahead,
why don't we give the definition of a heretic and see where the definition fits?
Do you know it off the top of your head?
Like look it up. We have our phones.
I don't know what the definition of heretic is off the top of my head. I mean, I know it's like
just call me the
like
dictionary.
people who spoke against the church back in the older days, right? They were heretics, but I don't know what the definition is. Here, while you do that, I'll read a few more comments. Mana wrote he didn't want to arrive at the trial because he didn't want all his gross things to come out that he had done. Yeah, exactly. When somebody else wrote, when I told a friend I wasn't attending church anymore, the first thing she asked me was, when did you stop going? I interpreted this question as her trying to see if I left because NJG was arrested.
Okay.
That's also like so anti-biblical, right? To have the apostle be the reason people leave the church, like that's the
let's get into that a little bit.
That's a first.
That's a good.
So what's the definition of heretic?
So here is the definition.
Heretic, a person believing in or practicing religious heresy.
So now we have to look up what heresy is.
Yeah. Heretic, when you are
practicing heresy.
Practicing heresy.
Oh my gosh.
Heresy. Again, the concern was if I stopped believing in the apostle. Yeah, that's the main concern. It's where's Christ in all of this, right? Heresy, belief or opinion contrary to orthodox religious doctrine. So contrary.
So then what we have to do is, I think that everybody who believes in God and who believes in Jesus Christ cares about Jesus Christ's doctrine. There are Baptists out there, and there are Mormons, and there are like different groups, right? But something that they all have in common is that they want to follow Jesus Christ's doctrine. So I suggest that we look at what Jesus Christ's doctrine teaches, and then compare who is doing the contrary, who is contrary to that doctrine. I think we can do that. It sounds fun, but we can do that at another time. I was curious.
You know what is one thing that I had kind of like been brainstorming? I want to talk about a few things that like because I know that there's a lot of people who are still in the church, and actually like the few days leading up to when we left the church officially, like there's always this thought of, can we do good while still being in the church? And I think that it's like a very important question to ask, because there's a lot of people out there who think, not a lot of people, a lot of ministers and like brothers and sisters who are in positions of influence within the church who think that like they can do good while being in the church. So I don't know. I think that in the future, like one of the things we should talk about is, if you want to fix the church, how do you go about fixing the church? Because in order to fix something, you have to identify where it's broken and what is broken. And I think that there's a lot of, I know that I said it in a previous video, but when you try to fix those things when you're still in the church, you get so much resistance from like those who are in positions of power to say, well, this is how it's always been done.
Yeah.
And this is how we do it, and then the one that nobody can argue against, this is what the apostle said. Like,
Yeah.
and then you're kind of like, well, it's not working.
Yes.
One of those things, super quick, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you?
No.
Because I can come back to this.
No, it's fine.
I was just going to say that one of the very broken systems is sending missionaries to places where they don't even have appropriate visas. Like, that is one of the things that gets to me the most, that really bothered me when I was still in the church, is that I don't know if people out there know, but like those missionaries who get sent out of the country where they were born in, that's like, they get visas for them under false pretenses. So the ones that I know of, right, they got education visas to go to a different country, and then the plan was, well, when we get in there, instead of going to school like the visa says we're supposed to, we're just gonna preach, and we're just gonna like use the visa for this for a religious reason, even though the visa is not supposed to be used that way. So when they get over there to a different country, if they have an education visa, they can't work legally. They're not supposed to be working. And so I know many of you like have seen this, but there's like brothers and sisters here in the US who don't have their visas or legal residency, or are not citizens of the US. And so, they have to get jobs that are
under the table.
Yeah, where they get paid and it's not reported because they don't have the documentation to work legally in the United States. And we understand that like many of those brothers and sisters came from Mexico or other South American countries, and so like, our parents maybe were in that situation, and like, they didn't come here for the church as missionaries. They came here for a better life, right? Is the standard. And because of that, and because they're illegal immigrants, like they have they have many difficulties that they go through. They're not eligible for certain government or certain benefits that are given to U.S. citizens. But the church is sending illegal immigrants into other countries under like false pretenses, and then those missionaries are over there unable to find work or having to find like bad jobs. And this is like all over the place, because when we were sent here to Montana, like the church to an extent kind of assumed that we would get on welfare so that we'd be able to like prosper as the Church of Christ. And the church like creates these unnecessary situations, and the reason it does that is so that it can say Montana has been conquered for the Lord. And isn't that like, we always thought that expression was so misguided, because it was just like missionaries who lived in other churches who were sent here, and all of a sudden Montana has been conquered for the Lord. And they say like Germany has been conquered for the Lord, and it's just a group of like a few youths and a married couple who have not like converted any souls, but they say that the country has been conquered. I don't know.
No, yeah.
I'm
absolutely.
sorry for my rant, but it's not just for the sake of ranting. It's illegal, first of all. It's I believe that is like when you move somebody from one region to another for the sake of economical gain, that's human trafficking. And it's a very broad definition. But if the church is exploiting labor from its members and then sending them to other states or countries, that's actually human trafficking.
So let's just give an example. Say I get sent to Germany, right? I get sent and my visa says that I'm a student.
Right.
So that I'm in Germany and I'm supposed to be utilizing my time there because my visa says that I'm a student. So what is a visa?
Well, visa
Let's
is
just break it down all the way.
So if you don't have like a passport, right?
Right. So you're not a citizen.
You're not a citizen, so you're not legally supposed to live in that country.
Right.
Like most of the time, you can get a tourist visa and be there for a little bit, which is like what we get when we go to Mexico. Like and they stamp our passport, like that's like a tourist visa. But we have to say like why we're there and how long we're going to be there.
Right.
Right. And so.
And you're allowed to reside within that country for that period of time.
Right.
So let's just say, okay, I get sent there. I am lying because I never go to school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then what?
So you don't go to school, so you're there illegally.
And then I find a way to work, whether it's doing like raffles. I've seen them do like raffle stuff off.
Not just raffle. You go find somebody like a construction worker, and they hire you for the day, and they pay you cash, so that like none of your income is reported, and you don't start filing taxes there because you're legally not supposed to be there.
Right. And I have seen raffles of people who were sent to other places. And they're trying to raffle different things off to the church community.
Yeah.
Right.
Like back home.
Right. To be able to.
To make money.
Yeah, to be able to have money and live. So I'm sent over there. The reason I am sent for is to study. And then once I get there, I'm actually not studying, but I am. You're gonna look at them.
Preaching.
You're gonna. I'm sorry. I'll just shorten this. But while I am there, I am preaching, and I am trying to work and live within the country illegally, because now not only did I lie on my visa, but I am doing something other than what I said I was gonna do. I wanted to bring this up, and I thought maybe we should bring it up in another live, but maybe we should just elaborate on this in another live. Does the Church of the Lord lie? Because this keeps coming up over and over again. And they say that they have to lie for the Lord, but they also say that no other church has the faith that we have in this church. But they keep lying when they send missionaries over to work. I'm so sorry to say this for anyone who I'm going to make uncomfortable with this next thing that I'm going to say, but they also send missionaries under the pretense or believing that they are going to get aid from the church.
Yeah.
I know that when we were here, we knew about the offerings that are made to help the battalions, and we thought that at some point we might get some help. We might get some breathing room, because we got here and we didn't know anybody, and we didn't have any resources here, and we didn't have jobs. We just drove over here, left everything we had, drove over here. We didn't have jobs or a place to stay. The church didn't offer helping us find a place to stay, and we never saw that money. We never received any of the offerings, but we were told that that the Lord would help us mainly, but we were also sent here with the at least idea that we would get some help from the beloved church who had sent us over here. Or from the apostle, the apostle and the church who has sent us over here.
Elisa wrote, I gave so much on April 6th for missionaries. Yeah, there's offerings every year, at least on April 6th, but there was so many others that it was always for the battalions, for the missionaries. And ask any missionary, like the amount of aid that anybody actually got was close to none. And actually, we were asked to put money aside so that we can give it to the apostle. Yes,
we were asked to still give our tithings, so we could give it to the apostle. So I'll say this: when I am told to lie to acquire a visa, to be able to go somewhere else to study, to go into another country to study, then they're making me a liar.
Mm-hmm.
They're making me lie because I know I'm not going to go study. because I'm supposed to get this visa so I can get into another country so I can preach for this church. But they're making me a liar. They are making me do something illegal.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, right? But then they lie to me by telling me that the church is going to have my back. And when I get there, I have to either find a job under the table. I don't know if that's how you say it. That's how I've heard it.
Yeah, I think that's how you say it.
Or raffle things off for autoconsumo.
Yeah.
By the way, remember how they would translate autoconsumo?
Yeah, so
Just total side note. Just what was the word?
I think it was auto consumption.
Auto-
Auto consumption. So I was a translator, right? And then somebody during the Holy Suppers, they were writing up like the agenda for the Holy Supper's topics, and then I saw in there, and then I heard somebody say that that one of those topics was going to be auto consumption.
Yeah.
So I was like, auto consumption, like eat yourself,
like eating yourself,
consume yourself.
Yes.
Anyways.
So, but yes, totally derailed us there. Sorry. But like I said, they are not only sending out a missionary with a good heart who wants to do the Lord's work and making them a liar and making them do something illegal, but then they are also lying to that very missionary. And you know what, guys? That is overlooked all the time.
Yeah. You're supposed to ignore it.
You're supposed to ignore it.
As a faithful missionary.
Yes. You're supposed to ignore it, and you're supposed to say, like, it's for the good of the cause, or the apostle of God doesn't know that this is happening. Whatever you can imagine, so you can ignore it. But again, I'll ask, fine, ignore that. But does the Church of God lie?
Right.
Another thing that comes to mind is 5 million members.
Oh, yeah. Somebody actually commented something about the 5 million members. And no, there is definitely not 5 million members. There is significantly less. Probably like, I would say less than 1 million. That's just my estimate. Like, if you remember the Holy Supper in San Bernardino area in 2018, I think it was 2018.
Maybe 2019.
So it was in the Glen Helen Center.
Yeah.
That Holy Supper there was an invitation made to all of the United States church and all of the foreign church. So just not like Mexico and South America, right? And like there was supposed to be, I think the number was like there was supposed to be 100 million, right? Like people there. And there was not 100 million people there. I'm sorry, 100,000. I said 100 million. There was supposed to be 100,000 people there, and there was not 100,000. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was like around 50,000 people. And that's supposed to be all of the North America and like European, Asian church. That was everybody. That was like everybody was invited.
I remember I even saw uncles who lived in Mexico.
Oh, that's right.
Come over because they were invited.
They were invited. Like choir members were invited, ministers.
No, they were all invited. Remember?
Oh, just members.
Yes, because Nason said, "You are always hosting the church. Now the church will host you."
Oh,
to anybody who could come.
That's right.
So I remember I saw uncles and cousins who I hadn't seen in the United States in a long time, and we were still not 100,000.
Yeah, and so I think that it's less than 1 million. Of course, I don't know, but it's just the church. And see, like the whole thing about Germany has been conquered for the Lord, and it's like it's missionaries from the church in other countries that just were flown
who are there illegally.
Who were flown there, and now the country's conquered. Like, it's not the definition of conquered.
No, it certainly isn't. I lost my train of thought.
I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay. But oh yes, the lies. But that is one of the lies. Why isn't it a big deal that the church keeps lying? It should be a big deal. It shouldn't be something that's overlooked, especially when it's not like an insignificant lie. Like, I might lie about my height. which I do.
Mhm.
But it's
I thought it was weird. You kept saying 7 feet 4 inches.
um, but it's but it's actually supposed to be a church that belongs to God, and at least the administration and the systems within it are supposed to be holy.
Right.
No, but they're not, because they're lying. How can something holy lie?
Saying you're lying for the Lord should be considered a sin.
I think that's heresy.
Yeah.
To say that you're lying for the Lord, or to say that the Lord would be even okay with sin, to say that the Lord would be proud of you for lying. So there was another lie, but I don't. Can you guys help me in the comments?
I wanted to see if anybody out there could relate to this, but one of the things that I thought was so strange was when we, and this goes back to the way that the church knows a little bit what it's doing. I say a little bit, but I think the church knows what it's doing, because we were asked to sign documents in Houston saying that we would not hold the church liable for anything that happened after we left Houston, right, as missionaries.
Yeah.
And so, like, we were, to me, it looked like that's a very legal document for something that's supposed to be so spiritual. I was saying, like, you're doing this because you want to do this. And we were like, well, kind of, yeah, we're doing this because because the apostle invited us. Like, how do you say that, right? But I remember when we left, I had a car loan because I still owed my car.
Right.
And then we get here to Montana, and we sold all our stuff. So we had some money, like a couple $1,000.
We didn't have like enough money to move across the state. But
yeah, so like we had a little bit of money, but it ran out very quickly, because like we started to need the money to like put a deposit on the church we were going to get, put a deposit on like our electricity, right? Because
just our gas.
Yeah. So anyways, like the money started running out very quickly, and when I called to say that I didn't have money to pay, I called my supervisor to say I didn't have money to pay for my car loan, and that like if I lost my car, how was I going to get to work? How was I going to preach? How was I going to go anywhere in like 20-degree weather that I had never experienced, because it was so cold here in Montana in January when we got here. And the supervisor's response was, didn't you say in Houston that if you had to lose your car for the Lord, you would happily lose your car for the Lord? And I was like, well, yeah, I said that, and I will happily lose my car for the Lord, but I'm not losing my car for the Lord right now. I just don't have money.
And what I remembered is that we could pay for our car.
Because I was already working.
You were already working, but we weren't allowed to.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to, because the money I got from my work was supposed to go to the church first, and the church being just like the missionaries here in Helena. And we were supposed to pay for like our shared expenses, like the house we were living in and the utilities that we had, and any like not fundraising, but like any activities for the church that we did as preaching events, right? So like hosting visitors, like we were supposed to pay for that first, and then if there was any money left over, then we could use it for things that we needed
ourselves,
like toiletries, like shampoo and soap and things like that.
And then to add on to that, we were supposed to prove what we used it on.
Oh yeah,
with receipts.
We were supposed to keep track of like all the receipts showing that we had actually bought the shampoo and toilet paper that we said we were going to buy. Anyways, like long story short, my car was like at the bottom of the list, right? And so when I was like, I don't have money to pay my car, I'm going to lose the car, like it's going to get repoed, repossessed, like taken back. They were like, well, you said you were okay with that.
That's our response.
Yeah. And
their response to us, sorry.
And we are not supposed to like complain. We're supposed to know that it's all for the Lord. But
then, I mean,
It's exploitation.
It is exploitation. But then what goes through a person's mind at that point? Like, how are your missionaries going to preach? You know, how are we going to get around? And we're missionaries for the church. Why don't you care about us? So this is, guys, when I say that like stuff resurfaces, I have like this very vivid memory, and I think you'll remember too, Lisa. We were in the car on our way from Texas, driving all the way to Idaho, because we were sent here. Anyway, we were in the car on the road, and I saw someone with one of those like NJG logos on their car, and we had just bought our logos for the Light of the World Church for our car, so we hadn't put them on our car yet. But they were in our car. And remember, I was telling you, honk, honk, honk. And you honked your horn. And when the brothers turned around, I was so proud.
Yeah.
I was so happy. I had such a happy heart. And I held up the logos. And I was like, God bless you guys. Like, we're going to, you know, we're going to spread Jesus' love too. You know, you're not alone. We're in this together. And it was such a scary thing, but we had such a heart for it. Like, we really, really loved this church, you know, and it's just hard to look back on that. And those feelings also come back. How much love I had, how much like excitement I had to do all of this, and then to realize that church didn't love me back. Why am I shunned, and why did I lose credibility in your eyes? When I said that I believed that the apostle did the things.
He admitted that he did.
Yes, but even before then, when there was already so much evidence. Just a minute, Saron. When there was already so much evidence, you know, against him. There's evidence against them. Like, I know the church is not dumb. I know the church. There are very, very smart people within the church, and if they did their research, then they would see what the rest of the world can see, that there is condemning evidence against Mason. So because I used the intelligence that God gave me, because I listened to God and I decided to do that, why am I shunned? I didn't change. I didn't stop being your sister.
You didn't do anything, right?
Right, I didn't do anything illegal. So why is my credibility gone in your eyes? Just a minute, guys. I'm going to put the kid back to bed, but I'll leave you here with my trusty husband.
So Bianca wrote, they also make the obreros pay for their own flights back. I know people that were sent to the Philippines, and when their time was up, they made them buy their own tickets back. That's in part one of the reasons why we're still here in Montana, because you know, we had to rebuild our lives from the ground up here, and to just move again and, you know, start over somewhere else because we left the church. Like, I don't know, we just didn't want to go through all of that alone again, because the church is not, it's sad to say, but I think that in moments of need, you can see that you can't really trust the church, because even though the church preaches a lot of love, the church doesn't really live that.
Did I miss something?
No, so I just read this comment that missionaries had to, a lot of times, and not only that, we paid for everything, like, to get here to Montana, because we were summoned, invited to go to Houston, and then in Houston, we got there ourselves, and then in Houston, we were sent here to Montana, and then we had to get ourselves over here. And she wrote that some people were sent to Philippines, and when their time was up, they had to buy their own tickets to get back home.
That's awful.
And the guy had to ask his parents only because they told them not to ask other church members for the help because that money could help the new obra. Yeah.
Oh my
But
word.
it doesn't. Elisa, I gave my brother because he and his family were sent to Oregon and the church didn't help them. Yeah. We also had to turn to family at times and say, hey, like we're not supposed to be complaining and we're not complaining, but do you think it'd be possible for you to help
But
us?
we're hungry.
Yeah. So yeah, we experienced that firsthand, and the reason you go to family, right, is because like you got to go to someone,
Yeah.
and nobody else is going to help you.
And you don't want to, yeah. And for so many other reasons, you don't want to be a burden to the church, and you want to have faith, right? Everything
Right.
is based off of faith.
I wanted to also read this one. I know John wrote, I know some obreros could not come back from where they were because they don't have money, so they're just stuck there. Yeah, a lot of people in that situation, especially if you don't have family who can help you, then you're on your own. Genesis, sorry, last thing I wanted to get to. Genesis, weren't you guys also expected to pay for the house of worship in Montana? Yes. So we actually, when we got here to Montana, all three families arrived in one single home, and we were all sharing the house. And then, like that was February, and then by April, we actually had already acquired a place to do our worship services or our prayer services, and yeah, that was all our responsibility as well. So super quick math, right? But like no, it was in August. By August, one of the missionary families who was here had left, so it was just two of us, and we divided everything. Like all of it, our expenses were divided for our home and for the rental church that we were renting. And yes, we had to pay for all of that. And there was actually a stretch of time where, for just my family, and because we had like 2 rent payments to make, we had 2 electricity bills to pay, and all of this, we were actually spending approximately $2,500 per month, like just on living here, and then we were making $1,500. So we were actually like for many months spending or in a deficit of $1,000 per month. And that's when, I know I've mentioned it before, like we went into a massive amount of debt, because even when we were like lacking $1,000 a month, we still were like, oh, you're invited to go to Seattle. Once to Seattle. You're invited to go to Billings, which is another city here that's 3.5 hours away. So you get out of work, and
when you're invited,
go.
You practically have to go.
And then the Holy Supper invitations that we had to go to, and like we were already like.
And we were invited to go to Billings, like to sing, right,
yeah.
at the park.
Or Great Falls, another city here in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like all these expenses, you're just expected to figure it out, and so. Like that was our personal situation, and then eventually, like we were able to get our expenses down a little bit because we moved out, because the place that we had rented initially was way too big for us, or too expensive, not too big, and eventually.
And we were only living in one of the bedrooms of like that place, and we were still paying half the rent.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Yeah, that's another thing. But yes, and that of course was hard. We never complained though, and I always told my husband, like, no, it's because we have to have faith, and you know, the Lord sees what we're doing, and you know, so you do everything and you do it with a happy heart. But where is the love towards us? Look, I want to say this, and I want to clarify. When we get to Idaho, the brothers there. The church members there fed us 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And they gave us a place to sleep when we get to Idaho.
So we were sent to Montana, but before we got to Montana, we actually arrived at the Idaho church.
At the Idaho church.
To kind of.
Which is the closest church.
Right. Prep whatever we needed to prepare to be able to come live here in Montana.
To find a house,
Yeah.
or a place to come and live here. This is really important for me because all credit to those church members who gave us food, who helped us out on their own dime. And I got a comment or a question saying, why would you get out of church? Why would you do that if the church treated you so well? When you came to Idaho, we fed you, the church welcomed you. That church, those members were so welcoming.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. I was so sad because my daughter wasn't going to grow up with her grandma, even though we were kind of used to that already, because we were stationed in Lake Havasu, and then we moved, but still, it was a big change for me. It was so cold here. I don't really like the cold. I like the sun and I like warmth, and I grew up in Las Vegas, and I loved it. I loved the weather. So all of those things were like huge changes for us, but the church was so welcoming. The church was so beautiful and sweet, and we were so grateful, and we still are. We're so grateful to those members who helped us that way. And
we have nothing against them. We love the church members for the most part.
Right. But really, you were just helping me. When you were aiding me and you were happy to do it, because you knew that I had given up everything in my life to come preach here. I did it with a happy heart, and I was so lucky. If any of you ever see this, I was so lucky to have you as somebody who was supporting me, even if it was just with church meals, even if it was just with a hug. That was something that my heart really needed at the time, and I was so lucky to have you, and I was so happy to be your sister in Jesus Christ. But I did all of that because I love God. And now, because I love God, and I have found out that this church, this institution, is not the church of God. Because of my love of God, I am no longer in that church. But I still thank you, and I still and I still feel indebted to you for the help that you gave me, that you gave my daughter. But I do think that it's fair to remember that I did this out of faith, that I wasn't just living off of the church. Right. I did this because I wanted to preach for Jesus, because I was your missionary, because I was a missionary for the church. So that's the first thing that I want to say. And all my love and all my respect for you and everything you do. The other thing that I do want to mention is that I think you'll remember, Misael, there was a month where we couldn't pay rent.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? We weren't going to make it. So we called this same church, we called their minister, and we asked for help because we weren't going to be able to make rent. Do you remember what happened?
Where we were loaned the money? We
were loaned the money, expected to return it the next month.
Yeah.
So we were able to pay that month, but next month we would have 2 rents due. We had just gotten here, you guys. Like, none of this was easy, and all of this was done with the best intentions and best put forward. So nothing. So we still love the members, and we are not bitter, but yes, hurt. It hurts that you looked up to us at some point, and then suddenly we weren't even worth asking how we were, or we weren't even worth asking why, and you listening to us.
Yeah.
And we're hurt that you just shunned us out of your life, just like that. But all the love to you still. Thank you so much. God is going to pay you for your hard work, for what you're doing out of the goodness of your heart to help each other and to help other people. I know that God sees that, and God will repay that. But I hope that more people can see that the people who are getting out are not getting out because we're apostates or because we are evil. We're getting out. A lot of us are getting out because we still love God, and all of us, I guess all of us are getting out because
the church is not doing things right, and the church leadership.
Right, because the whole church is centered. It's centered on the apostleship. We could not talk about the case and then talk about how that doctrine and the way that the church services and just that the church system is carried out is not congruent with what the Bible teaches. We could just concentrate on that. But the apostle, whom the whole church is centered around, pled guilty. And he is guilty. There is damning evidence against him. And we are smart, intelligent beings that God created with so much love. And we should be able to hold on to our agency, to our right to be informed people, and to see the reality of the facts.
Yeah.
I really went out there. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's good. Free to be asked, have you guys reported to the FBI about transporting cash? We're actually looking into that to see, because we definitely did it because we thought we were doing something good, and at that point when you're that invested in the church and you're that into it, you're like, oh, this is what I have to do, then this is what I'll do.
Yeah, no questions asked.
But yeah, transporting and turning in cash to the deacons, during the Holy Suppers, we now know that that's money. That's a form of trafficking, right? When you're moving cash and not reporting it correctly, that's illegal as well. So yes, we are looking into that. Thank you. And Tabita, things haven't changed. When they sent my tío Sergio in Ensenada, he was all alone. He was not allowed to work and only start a church. My dad, a non-LLDM member, would go over on the weekends to feed him. Yeah, we know a missionary who was here. I don't know if he's still here in Montana, but his family was just like giving him money every single month, and we were like, well, at least he's fortunate enough to have family who is well off, but most of us, I think, are not in that position where we can just be given money.
And I think we've all heard testimonies like that. They're told as testimonies of great faith.
Yeah.
The brothers who went to a different city or whatever to preach and suffered a lot, and had to kind of start from the ground up and lived in caves and all of this stuff. And all of this is preached as acts of faith, but why don't we notice that is actually neglect and neglect from the church.
Yeah.
I guess we don't notice it because we're offering, right? Because the church is offering. So the church thinks that there's just so many missionaries maybe that the money can't get to all of them. Or maybe we just don't ask questions, but we feel like we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Right. Tabitha, thank you so much for your support. She wrote that she's proud of us and that she's happy we can live a free and happy life. Yes, and we want that for everybody. We want that for everybody, that you don't carry this burden that is not yours with you. If you're no longer in the church, feel free to not listen to us because we don't want to put you through reliving your experiences, your bad experiences. We want you to have a happy and free life as well. But if you're still in the church, that burden that the church is placing on you is not yours. And I'm sorry to say that even though the church tells you that it's for the Lord, God would have never placed, Jesus said, carry my load, for my load is light. What God wants to give you for you is not stress and anxiety and fear and this sense of isolation that the church often puts you in, because we're here in Montana where, the community is largely evangelical. There is no reason to send light of the world missionaries who preach a very different type of doctrine to what the evangelical Montanans are used to. There's no reason to send primarily Hispanic preachers here to Montana.
Hi.
And so that's like from a strategic point of view, the church is not doing things for God. They're doing things to say Montana has been conquered by the light of the world church. It's not like we left and we have no idea where the missionaries are. We never see the missionaries here who are still in the church. Like, aren't they supposed to be preaching? Aren't they supposed to be,
The church is supposed to be growing.
converting the community here? It's because that's not the goal. The goal is just
place.
The goal is just to have, it's a very small place. Exactly. There's like a few grocery stores that you see everybody at some point.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show that the goal of the church is not to preach Jesus. The goal of the church is to reinforce its own grasp on its own members. And so that's why we're doing this, because we know that burden that the church places on its own members is not from God, and we want them to also live free and happy lives. So Tabitha, again, thank you for your super kind words and for letting us also reach out to you. We really appreciate you. And Rogelio, we are a community that think outside the box. You now have a new family that does believe in God and His Son Jesus Christ as our true saviors. Yeah, and see, like, we're so happy that you guys are here because you want to be here. So we are super appreciative, and we are thankful for everybody who's here with us, and we hope that we can be there for you as well.
Yes.
So yeah.
That's what we want.
Any final words?
I wanted to finish what I was saying a long time ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Going back to the documentary we were watching, with the
Keep Sweet.
Yes. So going back to that documentary, I just wanted to kind of invite everybody to just come with me to this and this thought process, I guess. Again, going back to the lies that La Luz del Mundo officials, administration, leadership kind of distills. One of the things that is highly, highly recommended is not looking at any of the court transcripts, not informing yourself of anything that has to do with the case, right? And if you do it, it's very much frowned upon. The reason I say it this way is because I've heard people saying, well, actually, we're not forced. We have free will, and if we wanted to, we know that we can look at the court transcripts. But you don't. But you don't, and you know that if you did, it would be highly frowned upon. So I just wanted to kind of make a comparison because it's good. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to look at history and what's happened with just courts and precedents and all of that, and learn from history, because if you don't, history is bound to repeat itself, right? Comparing is always a good thing. So let's compare these two cases. There is this man who is a leader of this church, and this church that he belongs to is actually not allowed to have access to any media. They're not even allowed access to a TV. So they are not allowed to look into, they are literally blocked. Closed off from having any opportunities to look into what is said and what happens in the courts, right? In the trials, right? He is declared guilty, and this church, who was never allowed to see what the judge said, who was never allowed to hear the testimony of the accusing victims, who was never allowed any information whatsoever, this church as a whole still follows him, even though he's in prison. Now, I know that La Luz del Mundo is not the same. We have more freedoms. Most of us, in or out, watch TV. But when you're in there, again, using your critical thinking, feels like a sin. You know that you are not allowed to. Is that right to say you're not allowed?
Well,
I
you're
want to say like
encouraged. You're
sure.
discouraged from.
Sure, you're severely discouraged from informing yourself on the case. In fact, doing so means that you have either less faith or that you're willing to bargain with your faith, right? That you're willing to risk your faith, right? So you're highly discouraged from looking at any of the court transcripts or anything that happens with the trial. So as a result, a lot of members still believe in Nason and still believe in his innocence, even though he himself declared himself guilty. I think that we should just compare these two stories because these people are good people and they are loyal. They believe that this is the church, the one way to God. But what happens when you take somebody's agency? What happens when you take somebody's right? Even if it's gaslighting, even if it's not physically like keeping them from looking into things, if it's if a pastor who you look up to and you regard as the keeper of your soul is telling you not to do something, you're probably going to listen to that pastor.
Right.
If your parents who you trust are telling you not to look into something, I mean, depending on who you are or the age that you're in, you're probably going to trust your parents, though. You're supposed to be able to trust these people, but if they are telling you and they are discouraging you from using your agency to be an informed human being, then as a result, you believe the narrative that they're pushing. That is not something that you came up with. That is not. I guess that is at that point. Is that really your decision? If you're just going by what this one group is telling you. So I think that it's so important because we see this documentary and we're like, they're crazy. They're crazy for still believing them. They're crazy for not leaving that place. But they're not crazy. They've been conditioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so important to make that comparison. And then just total side note, did you guys notice that some of the hymns that they sing in their church?
Oh, yeah.
The hymns that we sing, I mean,
well, the same.
That was kind of shocking to me. But I'll leave you with this. These are my closing remarks. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for being our community. I know that sometimes things become overwhelming, but personally, something that helps me to know is that we do have such a strong community and we do have people who are actually here because they want to be here and they want to support each other. Thank you to everybody who reached out to me. I haven't even gotten back to all of the messages that I got in Instagram. I really, really appreciated, and we both do. So I want to tell you that if you're going whatever stage in your process you are in, you're not alone.
I second that. I agree. You're definitely not alone. And we're here, and I'm sure we can find a way to find each other, right? So last time somebody had asked someone else in the chat to go through me, but I don't know who that person was so if you're, I don't know, Chaz I think was the YouTube user, but I have some information to pass on to you. Just let me know, and I can, whatever means you want to reach me through, just let me know and I'll send that to you. But I want to say thank you. I know that Tabita had mentioned earlier, thank you so much, and Rogelio as well, thank you. God bless you. God bless all of your families, and we hope the best for you.
Yes. Amen to that.
Yeah. All right. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye.